The Olympics are now behind us and left many Canadians with a desire to host the Games again in the future. Canada isn't a stranger to hosting the Olympics. We've hosted the Games in Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver. But while the Games are incredible for sports lovers, they are increasingly expensive, and questions are often raised on whether or not they are worth the money to host the Olympics at all. Joining us now to discuss the economic impact of hosting the Games is Brendan Caldwell, Director at Caldwell Securities Ltd. Brendan, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Theresa. I should have brought my little flag.
Now, what are the primary economic benefits and drawbacks a country can expect from hosting the Olympics?
Well, I think the primary benefit is that it does give countries an excuse to do things they probably ought to have done anyway, but they have a larger cause which will make them build a rail line out to the airport or fix up the roads or build extra accommodations. Not all of those expenditures are necessarily worthwhile, but there are some infrastructure benefits that do come, as well as raising the profile, perhaps from a tourist perspective, of parts of the world that where they might like more people to visit.
And what are the risks associated with the large-scale investments needed for the Olympics?
Well, we're going to find out in Toronto in a couple of years because we're hosting the World Cup, I think, of soccer, which is the only thing that rivals and possibly surpasses the Olympics, except the World Cup has tended to be hosted by a whole country rather than a single city. I think there are some games here and elsewhere in Canada, as well as the US and Mexico, but that's the only sort of other world scale event that's kind of like the Olympics and perhaps a Taylor Swift concert. I think that some of the issues are that a lot of money gets spent, not all of it gets spent wisely, leaving aside any possibility for corruption which might happen. And that the other particular problem for Canada is we're so darn hospitable. There's only been one country on earth that has ever hosted the Olympics and not won a gold medal, and we did it twice. Once in the wintertime. We didn't win a gold medal in 76 in Montreal, and we didn't win one in Calgary in 88. By the grace of God and some hard work by our athletes, we did manage to win more than a handful in Vancouver in 2010. But there is the risk that you could put on this great big party and everybody else wins except the host country.
And how do the investments in sports facilities and infrastructure benefit the host country after the Games are over?
It very much depends. I mean, if you build a velodrome for the bike racing, I don't think that's going to get used. I was in Calgary maybe 20 years ago, and I saw what was left of the ski jump for the Nordic skiing, which wasn't. I don't think it was still used. So I think even places like Beijing, which built the Bird's Nest, which was the stadium for a lot of the events, that's vacant, and goodness knows what Qatar has done with all the multitude of stadiums that were built for the recent World Cup there. So I do think that the infrastructure benefits can be limited. I was at the Paris Olympics and they were fabulous. I mean, I would suggest to everybody that can go to an Olympics at least once, especially now that Canada has a Canada House that you can go to as a Canadian and hang out with other Canadians and watch the events. It's just great. But to host the event is it's a really big and expensive deal. And it nearly bankrupted Greece. The South Korean Olympics I was alluding to, the Winter Olympics, they built a high-speed a rail line to, as far as I can tell, absolutely nowhere, where a lot of the events are taking place. So I think the infrastructure benefits might be spurious in some cases.
And can you elaborate on the potential long-term economic effects for a host country?
Yeah, I think I alluded to it earlier. Like Greece, I'm not saying Grexit, the potential Greek exit from the Eurozone was caused by the 2000 Olympics that they hosted there, but it didn't help. They took on an awful lot of debt. I think $8 billion in debt for a little country to host that event. So, and Montreal, I don't know if it ever paid itself off. I think the only Olympics to ever turn a profit was Los Angeles, which was the first time they ever corporatized it before the Olympic Committee realized they could get their claws into all those sponsorship deals.
Brendan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Theresa.